The night my mom's best friend called me by another man's name, I felt my chest tighten like someone had pulled the air out of the room. She was standing in our kitchen, a half-empty wine glass in her hand, smiling at me with tears in her eyes. "David," she said softly, reaching out to touch my face. "You came back. My name isn't David." And in that strange, uncomfortable moment, I had no idea that what felt like an insult would turn into one of the most important lessons about kindness I would ever learn. Before we go any further, if you believe small acts of kindness can change lives, make sure you subscribe to your channel name, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us share more stories that remind us what really matters. Now let me tell you what happened that night. It started on a chilly Friday evening in late October. My mom had invited a few friends over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just homemade chili, cornbread, and cheap red wine. I had stopped by after work to drop off some mail and fix her porch light, which had been flickering for weeks. My mom's friend, Linda, had always been around. Growing up, she was the loud one at birthday parties, the one who brought store-bought cupcakes but stayed to help clean up. She never married, never had kids of her own, but she was at every school play, every graduation, every backyard barbecue. That night, Linda seemed different, quieter at first. Then, after a couple glasses of wine, she grew sentimental. She kept staring at me from across the table like she was trying to solve a puzzle. When dinner ended, Mom went to the living room to answer a phone call. I stayed behind to help Linda gather plates. That's when she stumbled slightly and grabbed the counter for balance. "You okay?" I asked. She looked at me, really looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears. "David," she whispered. I laughed awkwardly. "It's Mark, Linda." But she didn't laugh. She stepped closer and put her hand on my cheek. "You look just like him. Same eyes, same smile." Her voice trembled. I thought, for a second, she didn't finish the sentence. The air felt heavy. I didn't know what to say. I felt embarrassed, uncomfortable. Part of me was annoyed. Was she that drunk? Did she really forget my name after knowing me for almost 30 years? Then she said something that stopped me cold. "I had a son once." I blinked. "What?" She swallowed hard and sat down at the kitchen table. The bravado, the wine-fueled confidence, it was gone. In its place was something fragile and raw. "I was 19, she said. "I wasn't ready. His father left when I told him I was pregnant. My parents were furious. I didn't know how I was going to survive, let alone raise a baby." I had never heard this story before, not from her, not from my mom. "I gave him up for adoption," she continued. "His name was David." The name hung in the air between us. "He'd be about your age now," she said softly. I always wondered what he looked like, if he was happy, if he ever thought about me. Suddenly, being called the wrong name didn't feel like an insult. It felt like a window into a pain she had been carrying for decades. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She shook her head. "Don't be. I made the best choice I could at the time, but some nights, it still hurts." There was a long silence. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't her son. I wasn't David. I was just a guy in his 30s who came over to fix a porch light. But I saw the way her hands trembled. I saw the way her shoulders slumped, as if she had finally put down a secret she'd been holding for years. So I did the only thing that felt right. I pulled out the chair next to her and sat down. "I'm glad you told me," I said. "That must have been hard." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I've never told anyone, not even your mom. Why not?" She gave a sad smile. "I didn't want to be the girl who couldn't keep her baby. I didn't want pity." In that moment, I realized how many people walk around carrying invisible stories. We see the surface, smiles, jokes, loud personalities, but we don't see the chapters they've locked away. We sat there for almost an hour. She told me about holding her baby for the first time, about signing papers with shaking hands, about watching another couple drive away with him, about the birthday cards she wrote every year but never sent. At some point, my mom came back into the kitchen. She froze when she saw Linda crying. "What's going on?" Linda looked at me, uncertain. I nodded gently. I had a son, she said to my mom, before I met you. My mom's face softened in a way I had never seen before. She walked over and wrapped her arms around Linda without saying a word, and that's when I understood something powerful. Sometimes kindness isn't fixing a problem. It's simply making space for someone's pain. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about Linda, about David, about how she must have felt every time she saw kids at the park or attended my milestones, graduations, birthdays, promotions. Had she imagined him in my place? A few days later, I stopped by her apartment with coffee. She looked surprised to see me. "Hey," I said with a grin, "it's Mark. Just in case you forgot." She laughed, a real laugh this time. We sat at her small kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the blinds. She seemed embarrassed about that night, but I told her she didn't need to be. "I'm glad you told me," I said again. It takes courage to say things out loud. Over time, our relationship changed, not in a strange way, not in a way that replaced anything, but in a way that felt deeper. On her birthday, I brought her flowers. On Mother's Day, I sent her a simple text, "Thinking of you today." The first time I did that, she called me crying. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," I replied. "I want to." It wasn't about pretending to be her son. It was about recognizing a wound and choosing not to ignore it. A year later, something unexpected happened. Linda decided to try and find David. Open adoptions weren't common when she was 19, and she had very little information. But with the help of online registries and DNA testing, she took a leap of faith. The waiting was brutal. Weeks passed, then months. And then one afternoon she called me, her voice shaking. "I think he found me." They started with emails, then phone calls. He had grown up in another state with loving parents who told him early on that he was adopted. He had always been curious but never resentful. After several months they agreed to meet. Linda was terrified. "What if he hates me?" she asked. "What if he doesn't?" I said. The day she met David, I drove her to the park where they agreed to see each other. I stayed in the car, giving her privacy. My hands were sweaty like I was the one about to meet a long-lost parent. I watched from a distance as a tall man in his 30s approached her. They stood awkwardly at first, unsure of how to bridge decades of absence. Then he opened his arms. She collapsed into them. I looked away, giving them their moment. But I'll never forget the way her shoulders shook. Not with grief this time, but with relief. Later, when she got back into the car, her face was glowing. "He doesn't hate me," she whispered. He thanked me for giving him a chance at a stable life, for making a choice that was painful but loving. As I drove her home, she reached over and squeezed my hand. "You know," she said, "if I hadn't called you by his name that night, I don't think I would have ever told anyone. I would have kept pretending." I smiled. "I'm glad you didn't." Here's what I learned from all of this. Kindness isn't always grand. It isn't always public. Sometimes it's as simple as sitting at a kitchen table and listening. Sometimes it's sending a text on a hard holiday. Sometimes it's choosing not to be offended when someone's pain spills out in a messy way. That night, I could have brushed her off. I could have laughed it away or left early. But choosing to stay, to listen, changed both of our lives. We never know what someone is carrying. The cashier who seems distracted, the coworker who snaps, the neighbor who drinks a little too much at dinner. Behind every awkward moment might be a story waiting for kindness. So if this story moved you, I hope it reminds you to pause before judging, to listen a little longer, to offer grace instead of irritation. Because one small act of compassion, one moment of patience, can open the door to healing that's been waiting for years. And maybe, just maybe, you'll help someone find their way back to a piece of their heart they thought was gone forever. Let's be that kind of person. Let's choose kindness,